This has not been a good week for Hillary Clinton. The intelligence community, Inspector General, concluding that they have discovered dozens and dozens of emails that reach well beyond top secret in terms of classification that had never been discovered before. That would mean that those dozens represent a single felony case, every single one of them individually. And that raises the stakes in terms of whether or not Hillary's going to get a possible indictment, or the FBI investigation will conclude that she should be indicted and Loretta Lynch decides not to indict her. That's how big that is going to be. And then she's got immediate political problems. Yesterday, CNN poll comes out, Iowa Democratic Presidential Caucus, Sanders 51, Clinton 43, Sanders plus 8. That's not good for Hillary Clinton. There's another poll that came out this week that had Sanders up by 4. On top of that, then we've got, Sanders 46-43 in New Hampshire. And then we got another poll that has come out in New Hampshire, the CNN WMUR poll, Sanders 60, Clinton 33. That's Sanders plus 27. And the ARG poll in New Hampshire, Sanders plus 6. This is an unbelievable turnaround here as it relates to the fortunes of Hillary Clinton. Here to discuss and debate all this, Dinesh D'Souza, author of the book Stealing America, and also Peter Schweizer is the author of the best-selling book Clinton Cash. Welcome both of you to the program. So we've got Dinesh. What did you go to jail for?
Well, I went to jail for exceeding the campaign finance limit by $20,000. This was $20,000 of my own money I gave to a college friend who was running for the Senate. I didn't stand to benefit in any way. And no person in American history has gone to prison, to my knowledge, for doing what I did.
My question to you then is, when you look at all of the possible crimes that Hillary Clinton has committed, and you look at whether or not the FBI is going to conclude she needs to be indicted, and the possibility that Loretta Lynch doesn't indict her, what does it mean from there?
Yeah, I think that, justice, let's remember, Sean, that justice is the primary virtue of the Democratic Party. That's why we keep hearing about social justice, about the fair share. We're the party of freedom. They're the party of justice. And justice at the same time isn't just a matter of did you break the law, but proportioning a penalty to the offense, making sure other people who did the same thing get the same penalty. So you can't have one set of rules for progressives and another set of rules for critics of the administration. But that seems to be the way that the Obama Justice Department plays the game.
You know what's amazing, Peter Schweizer, as we look at this intelligence community Inspector General letter that was sent to members of Congress, the contents that they found in the dozens of emails of Hillary Clinton are so top secret, and again, classified beyond top secret at SAP, that members of Congress sitting on intelligence committees cannot have access to those emails. That's how outrageous this is.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sean. And I think what's fueling those poll numbers for Bernie Sanders, I don't know that you've got a lot of newfound Democratic socialists in Iowa and New Hampshire. I think you've got a lot of people who are very, very frustrated that we almost seem to have this caste system in the country. I mean, Dinesh's case is a great example. Compare what Dinesh did with Sant Chotwal, who was on the board of trustees of the Clinton Foundation. He took $180,000 and sent it to federal candidates without revealing it. He got probation. He didn't get any jail time. And his case also included witness tampering. So you look at Dinesh's case, you look at Hillary Clinton in comparison to other political corruption cases, and there is a massive double standard in our justice system today. And there's no other way to explain it except for the fact that there is political favoritism. And the real question is Hillary Clinton going to face prosecution? If she does not, you're going to have a lot of people, I think especially at the FBI, very frustrated and very angry because people have faced prison on far lesser charges.
You know, what's going to be interesting here is the way the FBI sends this investigative report to Loretta Lynch and the Justice Department, because they can do it two ways. Now, they can send their findings without comment, or they can send them with comment and a recommendation to indict or not indict. Now, I believe that this is going to be so severe and so overwhelming that my guess is they might recommend an indictment. If that happens and Loretta Lynch and Obama try and protect Hillary, what does that do to the country in terms of a full-blown scandal?
Well, I think, Sean, if you look at history, when the Nixon administration tried to do that, in other words, tried to operate in concert using multiple agencies of government to do a cover-up, by the way, on a much smaller matter, not only did it bring Nixon down, but it swept a whole generation of Republicans out of office, and it established the Democrats as the majority party, at least until Reagan came along almost a decade later. So this is very high-stakes politics that's going on here. Of course, Hillary is trying to do the Clinton maneuver. Previously, she said, I didn't send classified information. Now she's basically saying, I did, but it wasn't, quote, marked classified. So this is sort of the classic rhetorical dodge that Hillary has clearly learned from her rhetorically masterful husband, but whether she will be allowed to get away with it is another matter.
You know, and you also brought up how the Clinton Foundation issue came up again this week, Peter Schweizer, and the whole issue of Mark Rich and his pardon has resulted in millions and millions of dollars in the coffers of either the foundation or the Clintons. That sounds like a quid pro quo and a pay-to-play example to me that maybe they would promise money in some ways.
Well, I think you're right, Sean, and I think it's a lot like the issue that is now recurring about Bill Clinton and his actions towards women, his sexual advances, and apparently, in some cases, what people are claiming, sexual aggression or violence. Clinton scandals seem to come back up again, and Mark Rich is a perfect example. I mean, this is a sort of a condemned action that he took on his last day in office, taking a guy who was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list and basically pardoning him. And everybody knew up until this point that, Mark Rich's ex-wife had funneled, $1.5 million to Clinton causes. And they kind of assumed that was the full payment for this. But if you look at the amount of money that the Clintons have taken in from Mark Rich business partners, from 3 of his attorneys, from his media advisor, and from other people connected to Mark Rich.
And his ex-wife.
You have to wonder, is there a connection?
Yeah, you do have to wonder that. All right, let me shift gears a little bit here. We've got a lot of intramural squabbling as we're now only 10 days out of Iowa. It shouldn't surprise anybody. National Review's hit piece on Trump last night is probably front and center. I have said that I want an insurgent candidate to represent the Republicans this year. But more importantly, then you got the Trump versus Cruz battle, and then you've got Trump versus National Review battle going on, and then you've got the whole establishment versus the insurgency wing. So there's a lot happening here. Where do you sit on these controversies, Dinesh D'Souza?
Well, I think that it's very obvious that Trump's support is coming from, A, the people who love the fact that he's the most politically incorrect man in America. B, he's the only presidential candidate in almost a generation who's not ashamed of being rich, who happily talks about how much money he has and wishes he had more and defends the fact that he earned it. Contrast this with Romney, who seems so defensive about his wealth. And third, just absolute frustration with the Republican National Committee and the fact that the Republicans have now held both houses of Congress and don't seem to have really done anything. So Trump represents the sort of antidote to all that. And to me, that's the three-pronged secret to his appeal.
And really, I think you can make the argument, Peter Schweizer, that both Trump and Cruz are a creation of the establishment and their failures. I mean, I think you're exactly right, Sean. There's no question about it. And I think what you're seeing playing out, Trump versus Cruz, and Rush talked about this a couple of days ago. I mean, if you look at the issue from the standpoint of conservative principles, clearly Ted Cruz fits that criteria better. But what Trump has tapped into is populism and nationalism. And I think of the appeal that a lot of people have towards Trump, whether one agrees with it or not, is this notion that he can't be bought. There is so much cynicism about people on both sides of the aisle being on the take, whether it's from, certain donors, whether it's they're expecting a big payoff when they leave office, whether it's special favors. And Trump has tapped into this notion that, I'm so rich, nobody can buy me. And I think that is part of what is fueling Trump's appeal in this. It's going to be very interesting to see if, as Rush said, nationalism and populism is going to trump conservatism, or if conservatism will win. What is Trump going to do if he's president? I kind of went over this with him last night when he was on TV. All right, so we know he would rescind all of Obama's executive orders. We know that Trump would secure the borders. We know that Trump would make it harder for people getting into this country that are enemies of America. So I think those are three good things. I specifically asked him about health care. He told me, and I know people say that he once supported the Canadian system in words, but he likes health care savings accounts. Believe it or don't believe it, I'm not here to be his special pleader. What would he do on the economy? He says we've got to balance the budget. He talks about veterans. He talks about Social Security and Medicare. Tell me what you think he would do that is not conservative. Peter Schweizer.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good question. I think part of the manner in which Trump is running the campaign, and that is part of the appeal, is people are looking at Trump and basically saying, we've heard politicians promise all kinds of things. We heard promises from George W. Bush. We heard promises from other candidates, John McCain in 2008 and others, and we just don't know whether we can believe what anybody tells us anymore. That's, I think, the level of cynicism. So I think, look, Donald Trump himself would probably say he's not a doctrinaire conservative. And I think that's the big question that Republicans would have in their mind is what would be his position on these issues. I know he's put out issue papers on things that seem to conform in these areas, but I think that's the real question mark that a lot of people have with him. On the other hand,
go ahead. Finish your statement. On the other hand,
I think on the other hand, any other candidate that promises, we're going to balance the budget in 8 years, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, people just aren't, unfortunately, buying it because they've been sold that so many times, and the level of cynicism is so high.
Dinesh, what do you think? I want to ask you specifically too. What do you think would not what he has said he's going to do? I don't want to get into the issue whether or not you believe in his conversion or not. That's up to the American people and Republican voters to decide. But as of what he has said he was going to do, what do you see that's not conservative?
Well, I think that there's a sense that Trump is kind of winging it, particularly in the very precarious area of foreign policy. You don't get the idea, for example, that how he's going to deal with Putin. Is he actually going to treat Putin as an adversary, or is he going to cut a deal with Putin? Trump could go either way. Trump is basically saying, I'm a boss, leave it up to me, I'll figure it out, I'll protect America's interests. But I think what Trump's appeal is, Sean, is simply this. It's very important for the next president to lift a lot of stones and look under them to see what has been going on in the Democratic administration of the past 8 years. Most Republicans, I think, fear that our leaders don't have the guts to do that. Trump, it seems, would have the guts to do that. He would not shy away from looking to see what are the various offenses that are being committed right now, as we speak, that are being covered up. We need a leader who has that kind of guts.
Do I take that as support for Trump?
No, not necessarily. It's analysis. I'm saying part of why I think this is a real strength that Trump brings.
All right. So if you're voting 10 days, if you're voting 10 days in the Iowa caucus, Peter Schweizer, who are you pulling the lever for?
Well, I hate to dodge this, Sean, but the nature of the work we do investigating candidates.
All right. So you're dodging.
I don't answer those questions.
Dinesh?
I'm in this, Sean. I'm making a big movie about Hillary and the Democratic Party, so I'm staying out of the internecine Republican fight.
Boy, oh boy, this is interesting. Thank you both.